The stars looked calm that night, as if the universe itself was at peace. From the wide windows of Earth's orbital station, people could see the faint blue glow of the planet and the endless dots of distant suns. For many years, humanity had believed that this peace was permanent. The galaxy had learned to live by one sacred rule, a law that every species, whether they had 4 arms, crystal skin, or glowing eyes, had sworn never to break. The law was simple: no species shall destroy another. That one rule had kept balance among the stars for centuries. It was the foundation of what the Galactic Council called the Law of Life. Humanity had joined this order only a few decades ago, after proving they could rise above their own wars and unite under one flag. When Earth signed the agreement, people everywhere celebrated. For the first time, it felt like the stars weren't something to fear. They were home. The Council's great dome on the planet Varela shined with thousands of lights from every civilization in the Milky Way. Each world had its seat, each species its voice, and all of them followed the law. To most humans, that law was more than politics, it was hope. It meant their children would grow up without fear of another world turning its weapons on them. It meant peace could last forever, but forever rarely lasts. One quiet morning, while the people of Earth prepared for another day, something strange happened. Across every communication channel, a sudden silence spread. No one could reach the colony world of Terraxis 4. At first, no one panicked. Sometimes solar storms interrupted signals or systems went down for maintenance. But hours became days and the silence didn't end. Terraxis I-4 wasn't just any colony. It was humanity's proudest outpost. A shining city built on red deserts and surrounded by silver towers. Families lived there. Children played in the air domes and scientists studied the strange crystals of that world. It was supposed to be safe, guarded by the promise of the galactic law. No one could attack them. No one would dare. When the rescue fleet finally reached the planet, their sensors picked up nothing at first. No radio signals, no life readings, no defense system online. Only after the ships broke through the planet's upper clouds did they see it. Terraxis 4 was gone. The surface below was black and twisted, as if a giant hand had pressed fire into the soil. Cities were gone. Only their shadows remained burned into the ground. There were no signs of life, not even the sound of the wind. In one of the orbiting ships, an officer whispered, "It looks like the planet itself died crying." The fleet's scanners traced strange patterns across the destroyed surface. The readings didn't match any human technology. They were stronger, cleaner, and far older. When they ran the data through their system, one name appeared again and again: Zerath Dominion. The Zerath were one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. Their world stretched across hundreds of light years, their ships larger than cities and their leaders known for cold pride. They had once ruled through fear before the galactic law was created. Since then, they had acted as if the law was beneath them, but they had never dared to break it. Until now, the images of Terraxis 4 spread faster than light. Across every planet, every species saw the destruction. The galaxy, once so proud of its peace, began to tremble. People couldn't believe it. The law of life, the rule that held everything together, had been broken. On Earth, people gathered around screens watching the reports come in. Some cried quietly. Some shouted for answers. News anchors tried to stay calm, but their voices shook. No one could understand why. Why would the Zerath destroy a world full of civilians? What did they want? Within hours, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Dome. Holograms of the destroyed planet hung in the air for everyone to see. The human ambassador spoke first. His voice echoed through the hall as he demanded an investigation and justice for the millions who had lived on Terraxis 4. The council agreed, or at least pretended to. They promised to gather evidence and hold the Zerath accountable if the proof was undeniable. But everyone in that room could feel the hesitation. The Zerath had power, ancient power, and no one wanted to risk their own worlds. Back on Earth, people waited for answers. Days turned into weeks, but no news came. Scientists confirmed what everyone already knew. The energy signatures belonged only to the Zerath. There was no question left. Humanity's colony had been wiped out. The galaxy had a law, but no one was brave enough to defend it. While governments argued and politicians gave speeches, ordinary people began to lose faith. On city streets, candles burned in memory of the lost. Posters showed the faces of children who had lived on Terraxis 4. In every home, people whispered the same question: if the law can't protect us, what will? Human pilots, soldiers, and workers who had once believed in peace now felt something else growing inside them: a quiet anger. They didn't want war. They wanted truth. They wanted respect, and most of all, they wanted justice. Deep in the orbital station above Earth, a small group of officers stared at the images of the ruined colony again and again. They could see the outlines of towers that once held schools, hospitals, and research centers, all turned to dust. The silence of those images haunted them. One of them finally said, "If they can do this and walk free, then the law means nothing." Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the galaxy, the Zerath Dominion said nothing. They didn't deny it, nor did they admit it. Their fleet stayed in their territories, calm and confident, as if daring anyone to question them. When a human delegation visited one of their trade stations to demand answers, the Zerath ambassador only smiled and said, "The weak always find excuses for their own losses." That moment was broadcast across every human world. The galaxy gasped, and Earth's people clenched their fists. The galaxy's peace suddenly felt like a fragile lie. Even the Council, with all its wisdom, could not hide its fear. Reports leaked that several member species wanted to ignore the incident entirely, calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding. Others warned that punishing the Zerath would lead to a galactic war. No one wanted to be the first to challenge them. So humanity waited, but deep down they already knew the truth. The Council would do nothing. The law had been broken, and the ones who made it had no courage to protect it. The streets of Earth began to fill again, not with celebrations, but with voices of protest. People carried banners that read, "Justice for Terraxis 4," and "The law is dead." Across the stars, human colonies held silent vigils. Entire fleets paused their operations to send signals of mourning, bright blue lights shining through the void. In classrooms, teachers told students stories of the colony, trying to make them remember that peace was not a gift. It was something that had to be defended. For a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to stop breathing. No one knew what humanity would do next. They were a young species, emotional and unpredictable. Some feared they would strike back in rage. Others believed they would simply grieve and fade into silence. What no one realized was that something had already changed. In that silence, humanity was no longer afraid. They had lost faith in the Council, but not in themselves. In quiet meeting rooms, military leaders and scientists began to gather. They spoke in whispers about what the law was supposed to mean and what it meant now. One of them said softly, "Maybe the law wasn't made to protect us. Maybe it was made to control us." The others nodded, knowing the truth in those words. Every great story in human history began when people were pushed too far. This was no different. The destruction of Terraxis 4 wasn't just a tragedy. It was the spark of something far greater. Across the stars, other species watched. Some pitied humanity. Some secretly hoped they would fight back, because they too had felt the Council's weakness. The galaxy had always respected Earth for its spirit, but now it began to fear what that spirit might become. As the last images of Terraxis 4 faded from every screen, a quiet promise spread across human worlds. It wasn't shouted or written, it was felt. A promise that this time, humanity would not stay silent. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy trembled not because of the Zerath, but because it knew what humans were capable of when they were betrayed. The law had been broken, and the stars would never be the same again. The rescue fleet drifted above the silent remains of Terraxis 4. From space, the planet looked like a dying ember, still glowing faintly in some parts, cold and colorless in others. There were no lights, no signals, no movement. Only the dull shimmer of dust where once millions of people had lived. Inside the lead ship, every screen was filled with data, but none of it could explain what they saw. The crew moved quietly, afraid even to speak too loudly, as if their voices might disturb the ghosts below. When they sent out drones to scan the surface, the images that came back were almost impossible to believe. Entire cities had been flattened. Steel towers had melted into rivers of glass. The forests outside the colony borders had turned into ash fields. Nothing alive remained, not animals, not plants, not even bacteria. The drones flew over the central capital and stopped above the ruins of what had once been the planetary archive. It was supposed to be one of the safest places in the galaxy, built to survive even the strongest storms. Now it was nothing but rubble. The rescue commander spoke in a low voice. "Start recording everything. The council will want proof." His voice trembled. He had trained for disasters, for battles, even for alien attacks. But nothing like this. The sensors soon picked up something strange. Buried deep in the ash were faint traces of energy, patterns too precise to be natural. When the technicians analyzed them, they froze. The readings matched the technology of one civilization, the Zerath Dominion. The name spread through the rescue fleet like wildfire. The Zerath were ancient, powerful, and feared. Their empire stretched farther than any other, their ships older than most civilizations. They had always acted proud, almost untouchable. But for centuries, even they had respected the galactic law, the rule that forbade the destruction of another species. Until now. Within hours, the images and reports reached Earth. News networks interrupted broadcasts to show the footage from Taraxis 4. The silence in every living room was heavy. People stared at the screens in disbelief. Mothers who had family on the colony fell to their knees. Children cried, asking where their cousins had gone. Across human space, anger began to grow. People wanted answers. How could this happen in a galaxy that promised peace? The Galactic Council had sworn to protect every world that followed the law. Now, their promise felt like a lie. The Council called for an emergency meeting on Virella, the shining capital of the interstellar government. Delegates from hundreds of worlds gathered under the massive glass dome that floated in orbit around the planet. Holograms of the destroyed colony filled the center of the chamber. Cracked buildings, broken streets, and mountains of gray dust. The human representative stood in the middle of the hall. His voice shook not from fear, but from grief. "Millions of innocent lives were lost," he said. "The evidence is clear. The Zerath Dominion destroyed our colony. The law has been broken. We demand justice." Some of the alien delegates nodded in sympathy, but many others looked away. The Zerath had strong allies. Their trade networks stretched across the Council's own cities. No one wanted to risk war. The Zerath representative spoke next. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Your evidence is incomplete," he said. "A mining accident, perhaps. A reactor failure. You humans are quick to blame others." Gasps filled the chamber. The human delegate's face turned pale. "You dare mock the dead?" he said. The Zerath only smiled and turned away. After hours of speeches and arguments, the council decided to delay its decision. They said they needed more investigation. Everyone knew what that really meant. Nothing would happen. The most powerful law in the galaxy had become a tool of politics. When the decision reached Earth, outrage erupted. Protesters filled the streets, holding pictures of lost families and signs that read, "The law protects the guilty." In every city, people lit candles at night, their lights flickering like 1,000 tiny stars of morning. Yet while the public wept, something else began to stir inside the halls of Earth's military command. Commanders and officers met behind closed doors, reviewing the data that the Council refused to act on. The proof was undeniable. The Zerath had launched a massive energy weapon from orbit, then wiped their tracks using stealth technology. One officer looked at the images of the ruins and whispered, "They think we're weak." Another replied, "The Council will do nothing. They're afraid. If justice won't come from them, it will come from us." For now, those words remained a secret. But across the colonies, a quiet determination began to grow. Humanity had always been known for its patience and its will to rebuild. Yet this was different. They weren't rebuilding this time. They were remembering. Families of the victims formed a united front, demanding that the truth be made public. News channels began exposing the Council's silence, showing documents leaked by anonymous sources. Every headline carried the same question: who protects the innocent when the law fails? Meanwhile, deep in the black void between stars, the wreckage of Taraxis 4's communication satellites drifted silently. Some of them still carried fragments of their last transmissions. Engineers worked day and night to decode them. What they found chilled everyone who heard it. The final message from the planet's control tower was only a few seconds long. A trembling voice said, "They're here, ships without markings. Tell Earth," and then nothing. The transmission ended in static. That was enough. Humanity no longer needed the Council's approval. The truth was clear, but across the galaxy fear began to spread, not of the Zirath but of what the humans might do next. Other civilizations had seen their anger before, back when they were still new to the stars. Humanity had earned respect not by power, but by their refusal to give up. Now that same fire was returning, brighter and more dangerous than ever. On one of Earth's moons, a group of scientists and soldiers gathered in a small research base. They weren't there officially. No records of their meeting existed. They stared at the holographic image of Terraxis 4 projected before them. One of them spoke quietly. "The Council wants silence. The Zirath want fear. What do we want?" An older officer answered, "We want justice. Not through words, through truth and strength. We'll build what they said we shouldn't. We'll be ready when the time comes." No one argued. They all knew what he meant. As months passed, the galaxy seemed calm on the surface. Trade routes reopened. Council debates continued. The Zirath behaved as if nothing had happened. Yet beneath that calm, the balance had already started to crack. The law that had once united the galaxy was losing its meaning. In schools across Earth, students asked their teachers why the Council wouldn't act. Some teachers hesitated to answer. Others told the truth. Sometimes, they said, those who make the rules forget who they're supposed to protect. Ordinary people began to think differently. The law had felt sacred once, but now it felt like a chain, something that kept humanity quiet while others grew stronger. One evening, on a crowded city street, a group of protesters projected a giant hologram into the sky. It showed Terraxis 4 before and after its destruction. At the end, words appeared, "Never again." The crowd erupted in cheers. It was no longer just about revenge. It was about survival. Back in the council chamber, rumors began to spread that the humans were planning something. Some species wanted to ban Earth from future meetings. Others warned that isolating them would only make things worse. One alien diplomat said quietly, "When humans lose faith in peace, even the stars should be afraid." He was right. In hidden shipyards orbiting Mars and in underground bases across the colonies, engineers began reactivating old blueprints, designs for ships that had never been built, weapons that had been banned under the law. The orders came quietly, with no official record, signed only by initials and code words. To the public, nothing seemed to change. To those inside the shadows of command, the change was enormous. Humanity was preparing for something the galaxy hadn't seen in generations. Yet on the surface, Earth tried to keep its calm face. Leaders gave speeches about peace, promising to stay true to the law, but everyone knew those words were only for the cameras. Behind the curtain, the decisions had already been made. Every civilization has a breaking point. The destruction of Terraxis 4 had pushed humanity to theirs. The Council's silence had confirmed what they feared most, that the galaxy's peace was built on fear, not justice. One night, as the last transmission from Terraxis 4 played again across Earth's networks, millions of people watched in silence. The faint voice echoed through every home. "They're here." Then static. A woman in the crowd whispered to her child, "One day, we'll make sure no one ever says those words again." The camera pulled back, showing the city skyline glowing with thousands of blue candles. Above them, the stars looked calm, as if pretending they didn't see what was coming. The truth was simple now. The law had been broken once. It could be broken again, and the galaxy had no idea what kind of storm humanity was about to unleash in response. The solar system was never truly silent again after the attack on the Orion Treaty Station. Every radar in Earth's defense grid kept scanning the void, waiting for something, anything that might move wrong. People on Earth tried to live normal lives, but they couldn't shake off the shadow that had fallen over them. Every news broadcast showed the same haunting image. The shattered station spinning slowly in space, its lights flickering like a dying heartbeat. Humanity knew the peace they had trusted for decades was over. In the heart of Earth's orbital command, the mood was heavy. Officers didn't sleep much anymore. The giant screens that once displayed calm trade routes now glowed with red alerts. The Council had broken the one law that all species had sworn to follow: no violence against neutral zones. That law had kept the galaxy from collapsing into chaos for over a century. Now it was dust. No one really believed the Galactic Council would attack humans directly. For years, the council had acted like a proud teacher, cold, distant, but never cruel. Yet now their fleets moved through space as if they owned everything under the stars. Reports came daily of colonies being searched, trade ships being stopped, and humans being treated like criminals for simply existing. Back on Earth, the public grew restless. Protests filled the streets, voices echoing in every city. People demanded answers. They wanted justice for the lives lost at Orion. But deep inside the command halls, Earth's leaders faced a terrible truth. They weren't ready for a full-scale war. Humanity had spent decades building peace, not weapons. Still, no one wanted to bow. Humanity's pride had survived worse than this. In a quiet engineering bay, a group of technicians gathered around something covered under a massive tarp. They called it Project Dawnfire. It wasn't a new ship exactly, it was a relic. A forgotten war vessel from a time when humanity was still young and wild among the stars. The ship's systems were outdated, its metal scarred by old battles, but its design carried something no alien engineer could copy: raw human defiance. They were secretly restoring it piece by piece because they knew what was coming. Meanwhile, in deep space, the first human fleet moved toward the edge of Council-controlled territory. They weren't supposed to attack. They were sent to observe. Yet the soldiers aboard those ships knew observation wouldn't last. Every time they looked out at the stars, they remembered the burning wreck of the Orion station. The silence of their fallen comrades haunted them. They wanted vengeance, but more than that, they wanted to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't weak. The first clash came without warning. A Council patrol intercepted a human convoy near the Valoran belt. The Council demanded the convoy turn back. The humans refused. Tension built until someone fired first. No one could say who. In seconds, the dark emptiness of space turned into a storm of energy bolts. The Council's ships had the advantage, but humanity's pilots fought like people who had everything to lose. When it ended, both sides were left scarred. News of the battle spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, neutral worlds went silent, waiting to see what would happen next. The Council declared humanity dangerous and unstable. Their message was clear: surrender or face annihilation. Yet on Earth, surrender was never even discussed. Humans had been underestimated for too long. In the following weeks, Earth scientists and engineers worked like people possessed. Old designs were pulled out of archives, and new technologies were born in hidden labs. People volunteered in massive numbers to join defense units, repair fleets, and supply missions. Factories ran day and night, turning out ships faster than ever before. Then came a message intercepted from deep space, one that changed everything. It revealed that the Council hadn't attacked the Orion station out of fear or misunderstanding. They did it to send a message to the rest of the galaxy, that even the humans could bleed. It was a warning meant to keep other species obedient. The truth hit humanity like a spark on dry powder. From that day, Earth united like never before. No borders, no divisions, just one purpose. The people didn't talk about peace anymore. They talked about justice. Humanity had once built a galaxy of trade and friendship, but now that same galaxy had turned against them. Project Dawnfire was completed in secret. The old ship, reborn, stood ready under the light of the moon. Its hull glowed faintly as power surged through it again after decades of silence. Those who saw it felt something stir inside them, a feeling older than any treaty. It wasn't hatred. It was pride. The ship's commander looked at the stars from the bridge and said quietly, "They think breaking their law will keep us down. Let them see what happens when they break the spirit of humankind." When Dawnfire launched, it wasn't just a ship rising into orbit. It was humanity's fury made metal. The message was clear. Earth wasn't hiding anymore. If the Council wanted to test the strength of the species they had dismissed as primitive, they were about to learn that humanity had no equal when pushed to the edge. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched. Some feared. Some secretly hoped. Because deep down, even the most advanced races remembered one truth that the Council had forgotten. Humans never fought for conquest. They fought for survival, for home, for one another, and when they did, the entire galaxy trembled. This was only the beginning. The Council had drawn first blood, but they had no idea what they had awakened. Humanity's wrath was not born of cruelty. It was born of betrayal. And once that fire began to burn, nothing in the stars could put it out again. The ship Dawnfire moved through the stars like a silent flame, its engines glowing with a steady blue light. The crew inside had grown used to the quiet hum of the old vessel. Each of them carried a different story, Some were soldiers, others were engineers or miners, but all of them had one thing in common. They wanted to protect Earth. Since the Council broke the peace law, humanity had changed. People who once dreamed about trade and science now spent their nights building defenses. Every colony, every outpost, every shipyard worked like never before. The planet that the Council once mocked as primitive had turned into a fortress of determination. The sky above Earth was now filled with newly built warships, their metal skins shining in sunlight. But out in deep space, far from the safety of home, the Dawnfire was on a mission that could change everything. They had received secret information that one of the Council's main outposts, located near the edge of the Valoran Rift, was being used to plan attacks against human colonies. The mission wasn't to destroy, it was to find proof, something the Galactic Council couldn't deny in front of the galaxy. The captain of Dawnfire stood at the observation deck, watching distant stars drift past. The crew worked quietly, their movements sharp and focused. They knew this mission could be the turning point. If they failed, humanity would be blamed for more aggression. If they succeeded, the truth would finally shine through the Council's lies. For days, the ship drifted through dark space. The crew ate together, talked softly, and tried to keep their minds from wandering. Space had a strange way of making silence feel heavy. Many of them missed the sound of Earth's wind, the smell of rain, or the sight of city lights. Some carried pictures of their families and looked at them every night before sleeping. They weren't just fighting for honor. They were fighting to make sure their loved ones would never live under fear. As Dawnfire approached the Valoran Rift, strange signals began to appear on their scanners. The space around that region was unstable. Magnetic storms, shifting asteroids, and old wrecks from forgotten wars. It was the kind of place no one wanted to go. That made it the perfect hiding spot for the Council's secret base. The crew worked carefully. They powered down their main engines to hide their signal and drifted quietly through the debris field. The only light came from distant stars and the faint blue glow inside the ship. Every sound seemed louder than usual. The soft clicks of controls, the quiet breathing of the team, the rhythmic beeps of radar screens. Then one of the operators froze. A faint blip appeared on the monitor. Another followed, then more. Slowly, the outline of a massive station appeared on the screen, bigger than anything they had seen before. It wasn't just a base, it was a fortress. The station's design matched no known pattern, and strange symbols glowed faintly along its structure. It was clear the Council had been building something powerful in secret. The captain gave quiet orders. The ship's drones were released, tiny machines that floated into the dark, sending back images. As the footage came in, the room fell silent. The Council wasn't just building a station. They were creating new ships, huge black vessels unlike any seen before. Their shape was sharp and alien, their weapons massive. The realization hit everyone at once. This was a war factory. The Council wasn't preparing for peace or negotiation. They were preparing to wipe out humanity completely. The crew exchanged tense looks. Some whispered in disbelief. Others clenched their fists. No one needed to be told what this meant. The galaxy's law had been broken, and now the Council planned to make sure no one ever questioned them again. They started recording everything. The ship designs, the communication logs, the production schedules. But then a sudden alarm flashed red. The ship had been detected. A Council patrol fleet appeared on their radar, fast, heavily armed, and heading straight toward them. The crew had only seconds to react. Engines roared to life, lights flickered, and the ship turned hard to escape. Outside, the blackness of space lit up with chasing lights and laser bursts. Inside Dawnfire, everyone worked as one. Engineers rerouted power to shields, pilots zigzagged through asteroids, and gunners returned fire when needed. The old ship groaned under the stress, but it held firm. It was as if it remembered its purpose, to protect humanity even when everything seemed lost. After a long chase, the ship finally managed to lose its pursuers by diving into the magnetic storms of the rift. The crew sat in silence, breathing heavily, hearts pounding. They had survived, but only barely. The data they had gathered was now the most important thing in the galaxy. It was proof that the Council had betrayed the peace they pretended to defend. If humanity could deliver it to the other races, they might finally gain allies, or at least sympathy. But their journey home was not going to be easy. The Council knew someone had seen their secret. They would chase the Dawnfire through any storm to destroy that evidence. For days, the ship remained hidden in the rift, repairing damage and conserving power. The crew took turns sleeping and watching the sensors. Time moved slowly in the darkness. Each hour felt like a day. Some began to doubt they'd ever make it home. Yet hope has a strange way of surviving in humans. One of the engineers suggested using the rift's unstable energy to boost their engines for a single jump, a dangerous move that could either send them home or tear the ship apart. There was no other choice. They prepared for the jump. Everyone strapped in, holding their breath as the engines charged. The metal walls trembled, sparks danced across control panels and lights dimmed. Then in a flash of white and thunder, Dawnfire disappeared into the storm. When the light faded, they were back in open space. Earth's distant blue glow appeared on the radar, small but real. Cheers filled the room. Some laughed, others cried quietly. They had made it. The moment Dawnfire entered the solar system, every communication channel came alive. Earth Command received the transmission, the data files that exposed the Council's true plans. Within hours, the truth spread across every human colony. The reaction was powerful. People flooded the streets again, not in fear this time, but in unity. Every worker, pilot, and soldier knew what had to be done. They weren't fighting just to survive anymore, they were fighting for justice, for the right to exist as equals in the galaxy. The Dawnfire returned to orbit, its hull scarred, engines damaged, but its mission complete. The crew stood together, looking out at their home world. They had brought back the truth, and with it, the spark that would change everything. In the quiet that followed, one of them whispered, "They broke their law. Now the galaxy will see what that means." Back on Earth, leaders gathered to plan the next step. Humanity's fleets would soon rise, not as conquerors, but as defenders of freedom. Every star that once looked cold now seemed alive with purpose. The Council had started this war believing humans would fall apart. They didn't understand that when humanity is pushed to the edge, it doesn't crumble, it unites. And now, under the same sky that had once seen only peace, a new chapter began. The fire of vengeance was no longer hidden. It burned quietly in the hearts of every human, ready to rise when the time came. The Council might have power, but they had made one mistake too many. They had awakened humanity's unbreakable spirit. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but a storm was coming. Not of destruction, but of justice. And this time, it would be the humans who wrote the next law the stars would never dare to break again. The message from the Dawnfire spread through every corner of human space like a wave of lightning. Every colony, every station, every worker who once felt small under the Council's rule, now felt something powerful rising inside them. Hope mixed with anger. The proof of the Council's lies had awakened the entire species. For the first time in a long time, humanity stood together, not as divided nations, but as one people under one cause. Factories that once built transport ships now roared with the sound of warship engines. People who had never picked up a tool before volunteered to repair fighters, load supplies, and train soldiers. Cities glowed through the night as people worked without sleep. Children drew ships and stars on walls saying, "We will protect Earth." The whole world felt alive with purpose. The Galactic Council tried to deny the truth. They called the Dawnfire's data fake, saying it was human propaganda, but deep down the galaxy already knew who was lying. Other races began to whisper. The Valoran tribes, the Lyrians, the small trade worlds near the edge of the rim. They had seen the Council's cruelty before. They had just been too afraid to speak. Now, because of humanity's courage, they began to question everything. Back on Earth, the atmosphere was electric. The Dawnfire had returned damaged, but its crew was celebrated like heroes. They had not just survived, they had lit the flame of freedom. Scientists began analyzing the Council's new warship blueprints that were found in the stolen data. What they discovered shocked everyone. The Council had been developing weapons far more destructive than anyone imagined. Machines that could erase entire colonies. They hadn't broken the law by accident. They had planned to rule through fear. Meetings were held in underground bunkers and floating command stations. Every leader, scientist, and engineer gathered around glowing maps of the galaxy. Humanity's fleets were still small compared to the Council's, but they had something the Council didn't: unity, creativity, and a reason to fight beyond control or greed. One old commander said, "We don't need to outnumber them. We just need to remind them why humans survive where others fall." So, preparations began for the largest operation in human history. The plan wasn't to destroy, it was to expose. The goal was to show every world that the Council's empire was built on lies. The mission was given a name that carried the spirit of their struggle, Operation Dawnlight. Across the galaxy, fleets began to move. Not just human fleets. Small groups from alien worlds joined quietly, offering information, resources, and ships. They had suffered under the Council too, and now they saw a chance for something better. Humanity's courage had reminded them that even the smallest spark could start a fire. The Dawnfire, though heavily damaged, led the mission once again. It had become a symbol of resistance, its scarred hull proof that humans didn't need perfection to fight. They only needed heart. The crew returned to their posts ready to fly into danger once more. When the combined fleet reached the edge of Council space, the stars seemed darker than usual. Ahead lay the Council's main defense line, a massive formation of ships shining cold and silver like a wall of steel. The Council's message echoed through every frequency. Turn back or face destruction. The reply from Earth was short. We're not here to destroy. We're here to remind you of the law you broke. Silence followed. Then the first Council ships opened fire. The stars lit up with explosions. The battle had begun. The fight was fierce and long. The Council's ships were faster and stronger, but humanity fought with something different. They didn't follow predictable tactics. They used old tricks, deceptive maneuvers, sudden turns, and clever traps. Every pilot fought as if protecting their own home. Every engineer worked through smoke and sparks to keep systems running. In the middle of the chaos, the Dawnfire broke through the enemy line. It was barely holding together, but its crew kept pushing forward. Their mission was not to destroy the Council's fleet. It was to reach the communication hub that linked all Council broadcasts. If they could upload the proof of the Council's crimes directly into that system, every world in the galaxy would see it. Inside the Dawnfire, alarms blared, metal walls shook, and lights flickered. The crew worked like a heartbeat, every move in sync. When the main weapon systems failed, the engineers rerouted power manually. When the ship's shields broke, the pilots flew dangerously close to asteroids to hide. They refused to stop. Finally, they reached the hub, a massive station glowing like a small sun. Its defenses were too strong to fight head-on, so the Dawnfire's crew did something bold. They overloaded their engines, using the ship's power core as a temporary signal booster. It was dangerous, almost suicidal, but it was the only way to transmit the truth across the galaxy. The captain gave a single order: send it. The ship's systems screamed under the pressure. Sparks flew, alarms echoed, and panels burst with heat. But the data began to upload. Every world, every planet, every outpost suddenly received the same transmission. The recordings from the Council's secret factory, the proof of their betrayal, the images of what they had done. All across the galaxy, screens lit up. People stopped whatever they were doing to watch. Silence spread. Then anger. The Council's lies collapsed in an instant. The Council fleet hesitated. Some ships stopped firing. Others even turned their weapons away. They had just realized what their leaders had hidden from them. The galaxy had changed in a single moment. Inside the Dawnfire, the crew watched the data finish sending. The ship was falling apart, its systems nearly dead, but they smiled through the smoke. They had done what they came to do. Humanity had spoken the truth not with fear, but with courage. Earth's fleet, seeing the Council's hesitation, pulled back. They didn't press the attack. They didn't need to. The truth was the most powerful weapon of all. In the following days, the galaxy began to shift. Protests broke out on Council worlds. Old allies turned away from the corrupt rulers. Trade routes reopened, this time under fair agreements. The Council's power began to fade, not because of war, but because no one believed in them anymore. The humans returned home to a planet glowing with pride. The Dawnfire was retired, placed in orbit as a monument, a reminder that courage can outshine fear. People would look up at the night sky and see that faint spark moving above, remembering the crew who risked everything to tell the truth. The galaxy slowly began to rebuild itself on new terms, ones written not by fear or power, but by fairness. Humans didn't seek to rule. They only asked for respect. Their message echoed through the stars. No one is above the law, not even those who made it. Years later, when peace returned, stories of the Dawnfire were told to children across many worlds, human and alien alike. They spoke of a ship that flew into danger not to destroy but to bring light. They spoke of a people who refused to bow when others tried to break them. Humanity had demanded justice, and they had earned it, not through domination but through unity and truth. The galaxy that once shuddered in fear of war now looked to Earth with respect. The law had been broken once, but humanity's courage had rebuilt it stronger than before. The stars no longer felt distant or cold. They shone brighter, as if remembering the day when one small blue planet stood up and reminded the galaxy what strength really meant. And somewhere in the quiet, drifting between worlds, the old Dawnfire continued its endless orbit, a silent guardian of the truth that changed the stars forever. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with voices, each one rising higher than the next. The huge glass dome above them reflected the light of nearby stars, but inside it felt dark and heavy. The air itself seemed thick with arguments, lies, and fear. Delegates from every known species stood in their shimmering seats, speaking over each other. Holograms flickered across the room, evidence, reports, theories, all about one thing: the destruction of Terraxis 4. The human representative stood silently for a while, waiting for the noise to fade. When it finally did, he spoke in a calm but steady voice. The evidence is clear. Our people were destroyed by the Zerath Dominion. You all saw the recordings. You all saw the proof. Some of the alien leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others stared straight ahead, unwilling to meet his eyes. The Zerath delegate, tall and proud, rose slowly. His voice was smooth and cold. You speak of proof, yet your own investigation is incomplete. Accidents happen in the void. Perhaps your colonies build too close to unstable energy fields. A murmur spread across the chamber. Everyone knew that was a lie, but no one wanted to challenge him. The Zerath were powerful, and their empire's fleets guarded many of the Council's trade routes. The human representative raised his hand. You dare call this an accident? Children lived on that world. Families, scientists, workers, they didn't die by chance. They were wiped out deliberately. The Zerath gave a faint smile, the kind that carried no warmth at all. If that were true, what do you plan to do? You have no authority without the Council's approval. No one does. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Everyone in the room knew he was right. The Council by law controlled all military actions between member worlds. If the Council refused to act, then nothing could be done, at least nothing official. After a long pause, the Council leader, a calm, silver-skinned figure, spoke. We must proceed carefully. War benefits no one. We will continue to investigate before taking action. The human delegate's voice broke slightly. How many investigations will you need before you find your courage? No one answered. When the session ended, the human representatives walked out of the chamber in silence. Reporters rushed toward them with cameras and microphones, shouting questions. The only answer they gave was short and bitter. The Council has failed us. News of the decision reached Earth within hours. The reaction was immediate. Protests erupted in every major city. People filled the streets shouting for justice. They held banners that read, "The law protects the cowards, and no more waiting." In the middle of one of those crowds, an old man held a small piece of charred metal, a relic from Terraxis 4. His daughter had lived there. When asked by a reporter what justice meant to him, he said quietly, "Justice means my grandchildren can sleep without fear." The Council tried to calm the public by sending out statements about further inquiries, but no one believed them anymore. They had already made their choice, to stay silent. In the shadows of Earth's military headquarters, things were different. Generals, commanders, and scientists sat in a sealed room, watching the same Council broadcast. The tension in the room was so sharp it felt like the air could crack. One of the officers finally spoke. They'll never act. They're too afraid to lose their trade partners, their treaties, their comfort. Another officer leaned forward. If the law can't protect us, then we need something that can. What you're suggesting would mean rebellion, someone said quietly. It would mean defying the Council. The reply came softly but firmly. Then we defy them. That night, while the cities of Earth glowed with anger and sorrow, a secret order was transmitted through encrypted channels. It had no title, no official seal. It carried only a few words: begin silent mobilization. In a hidden orbital facility near Jupiter, long dark hangars came to life. The air filled with the deep hum of engines being tested, machines being assembled, and ships being reactivated. Many of these designs had been banned decades ago by the Council, ships too powerful, too dangerous, or too independent. Now they were being rebuilt. The engineers didn't ask questions. They had seen the images of Terrax's 4, too. Every bolt they tightened, every hull they welded was an act of quiet vengeance. Back on Earth, rumors began to spread. Some said the military was preparing something massive. Others claimed Earth was gathering its allies in secret. Officially, the government said nothing. But everyone could feel it. Something was changing. Meanwhile, on the planet Varela, the council continued to meet, pretending everything was normal. The Zerath delegate walked through the halls with his usual arrogance. When a journalist asked him about the human protests, he smirked. Let them scream. Words cannot hurt us, he was wrong. Words were only the beginning. Humanity had always been underestimated by the older species. The galaxy saw them as young, emotional, reckless. Maybe that was true. But that same emotion gave them something the others didn't understand. Unity. When humans felt pain, they didn't stay broken. They rebuilt stronger. Across the colonies, factories began shifting production quietly. Mining worlds increased their shipments of rare metals. Cargo ships changed their flight paths. Every small move was part of something larger, a pattern no one outside of Earth could yet see. For the people, life went on, but there was an undercurrent of purpose in everything. Students studying engineering knew that their work might one day serve a greater cause. Pilots flying cargo missions practiced sharper maneuvers, telling themselves it was just in case. Even the artists began painting differently, less about beauty, more about resilience. The galaxy, once full of bright, peaceful trade, was now filled with tension. The council issued new statements urging calm, but their words rang hollow. No one trusted them anymore. One evening, a broadcast from a small colony station on the edge of human space went viral. A young technician looked into the camera and said, "If the council won't defend us, then we'll defend each other. No one can silence us all." His voice echoed across millions of screens. The council tried to block the message, but it was too late. The idea had already spread. Humanity had stopped waiting for permission. At the same time, mysterious reports began appearing in the outer sectors. Unknown ships were seen moving through asteroid belts, testing their engines. Some said they bore the markings of Earth, though no records confirmed it. In quiet corridors and dark meeting rooms, the first whispers of rebellion grew louder. No one called it war, not yet, but everyone knew what it meant. The Galactic Council met again, trying to calm the storm. Some delegates demanded punishment for the humans if they continued to act on their own. Others warned that pushing them too far would only ignite a greater conflict. The leader of the council said, "Humanity must remember its place among the stars." Those words reached Earth the next morning. They played on every news screen. The people laughed bitterly. Their place among the stars had already been decided. They would no longer kneel. Across the night sky, construction lights flickered from the hidden shipyards. Enormous vessels began to take shape. Some were smaller strike ships, fast and agile. Others were giants, long and armored, built to survive any battle. In the control rooms, technicians spoke quietly as they worked. They didn't use the word war. They called it protection. Yet deep inside, everyone knew what they were really preparing for. While the council debated endlessly, humanity acted. Months passed and the tension grew unbearable. Trade ships between Earth and the outer colonies reported being followed by unknown vessels. The Zerath fleets began to patrol nearby systems, claiming they were only ensuring peace. Everyone knew they were sending a message: stay quiet or face the same fate as Terrax's 4. Earth didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, in the hidden meeting rooms under the Atlantic, a new council formed. Not of politicians, but of commanders, engineers, and scientists. They didn't give speeches. They planned. They studied every weakness of the Zerath fleets, every flaw in their defenses. They didn't want revenge. They wanted justice that would never be questioned again. The humans had learned something powerful from their pain. Peace cannot exist without strength. One night, far from the cities, a single transmission pulsed through space, bouncing between relay satellites, encoded and nearly invisible. It carried a single line of text: Phase 2 approved. Prepare the Nemesis. No one outside the secret networks understood what that meant, but those who did smiled quietly. They knew the time of silence was ending. The Galactic Council still believed humanity would calm down, that their anger would fade as time passed. What they didn't understand was that this wasn't just anger anymore, it was conviction.
Humanity had realized something the Council had forgotten long ago. Justice is not given.
It's made. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson again.